Thank you very much. Before I thank you on behalf of the audience, let me just ask people to stay in their seats. We're going to start the other panel right away, and I'd ask the three panelists, as Secretary Steinberg leaves, to...
Give me a chance. I have been...
Well, there were about... excuse me, there were four... I didn't see you had the microphone. There were four other people with hands up. We actually have to...
Provocative question. Why don't you give me a chance? 30 seconds.
It's hard to give you a chance and not give 4 or 5 other people a chance. This is not a protest rally.
Go ahead.
Thank you for being so polite in your questioning.
Yeah, I'm sure. My name is Armand Kless. I have a slightly different approach. So my question is, since you're also a professor, I think the biggest challenge for NATO for the last 20 years or so has been not becoming irrelevant, or how to stay relevant, since the conceptual basis of NATO is collective defense, not collective security or cooperative security, collective defense. That implies to have an antagonist, a strong opponent, an enemy, even, and you know what the late, now he just died a few days ago, Arbatov said about this. So who could be this enemy? Russia? No, no longer. Could it be Islam? And is that why NATO is now in Afghanistan? What is the rationale of the war in Afghanistan? It seems perfectly absurd. I have been in strategic studies.
I got your question. Let me try to answer it for you.
The only rationale it can have is to create new enemies. More enemies have a stronger opponent.
Let me talk about both. Both good questions, and let me talk about both the rationale and just briefly about Afghanistan. On the rationale, I don't need to tell this audience. This is an audience which is about as sophisticated on the history of NATO as anybody. That NATO was more than just a defensive alliance against the Soviet Union. It was a community that helped solidify the economic side of Europe's recovery from World War II and create a framework in which the past conflicts within Europe could be resolved. There's a famous aphorism about NATO, which I won't repeat here, but is well known to most of you. But it was a framework that allowed European integration to move forward and to create a real partnership. And there was always an Article 4 as well as an Article 5 to NATO. So I don't accept the proposition that NATO requires an enemy. It was an important part of what we did when we had the challenge from communism in the Soviet Union, but it was not the only part of what we did. And that's why it is, to my mind, not difficult to imagine a NATO that isn't dependent on an adversary, but rather on common challenges and common opportunities. And I think the success of our adaptation and enlargement of NATO over the last 20 years is admirable proof of that. With respect to Afghanistan, I don't sometimes find this kind of odd that people don't remember, but certainly Americans remember that the reason that 9/11 happened was because we were unable to reach an adversary who was ensconced in Afghanistan and threatened and ultimately attacked our homeland. And that attack was an Article 5 attack, which NATO recognized was an attack on a member state. For those of us who were in government at the time, we recognized that we needed to be able to respond to that, and we cannot allow a circumstance to arise again in which there's a haven in Afghanistan that will pose a direct threat both to the United States and Europe. And I think we're all aware, as we contemplate current events and the current threat environment, that remains as relevant today as it did 10 years ago. So we're not in there. It's got nothing to do with Islam. It's got nothing to do with any of those things. It's got to do with a very tangible threat to our security, and that's why we're all there, and that's why we're doing it as NATO, because it is a threat to the NATO members within the terms of our treaty. And we've made clear that that's the objective. The President, Secretary General, and all the member states of NATO have been very clear about our objectives there. And it's very important that we stay focused on that, because it's important to remind our publics just what the stakes are. So I think there is a very compelling case for our engagement there, and it's very compelling that we're doing it the way we're doing, which is in partnership with the Afghan people and the Afghan government, because in the long term, this requires the capability of the Afghans themselves to provide that basic level of security and governance that will make sure that Afghanistan does not become a danger to all of us again. So thank you for your question, and thank you for all of you.
Secretary Steinberg, thank you for your graciousness, and thank you for the importance of your visit. Thank you.